be really responsive as you guys are watching. Hey, everyone that's jumping on our live. Adam, should we start by telling these guys how we met? People seem to really like that story.
Yeah, I feel like there's contrasting, like we have the same outcome of the story, but...
Yeah, you tell your version. You tell your version.
Okay, well, you all know Nicole, so you know how engaging she is and how present she is. So this is where this story goes. I hopped onto an airplane and it had been a late evening the night before, flying from Sydney back to the Gold Coast. And
I was flying out of Canberra.
Yeah, and sure enough, I didn't know Nicole at stage, and as I walked on, this person locked onto me with their charm, and I was very tired, and I was quite
How could you not?
Perhaps a little bit judgmental, and I didn't want to talk, but within about 3 seconds, we were both opening up completely about who we were and what we believed and how we saw the world. And from that very time, I knew that I had a very, very good friend in Nick. So there's probably a longer version, but for the sake of Facebook,
short version.
Yeah.
So I feel exactly the same about Adam, and he's amazing. And at the time when we met each other on that flight, he was the CEO of an organisation called DTA.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Engineer by, would you say, by trade?
By education.
By education.
By education.
And then went on to build a pretty awesome. Is it a national or multinational business?
National. So offices throughout Australia, and globally.
Yep.
That's at the time that I exited. Yeah.
And I remember you being very much engaged and involved in that organisation still when we met 2 years ago. And then when we caught up maybe 6 or so months ago, the whole trajectory of your journey had started to change.
Sure had.
And this is sort of where I want to go with this conversation, because I think that's something that leaders don't often talk about is actually what is it like through the times where you're starting to question who you are as a leader and those vulnerabilities and the character that's actually required. And I feel like the theme of the week, so Adam's been with me at Mind Value, which is another amazing thing, because during this lunch that we had not so long ago, 6 months ago, I said you should come to this thing in Estonia with me, and here he is. So I really love yes people, and I feel like that's not only a theme for us this week and the workshop that I ran at Mind Valley, and how vulnerability has just been the theme that's come out of that so strongly. And I feel like you have something really valuable to offer, especially being a young Australian who's very successful male through that period in your life, to go and study a yoga teacher training in Bali and to be here at this event in Estonia is a journey. So
it's been a cool journey.
Talk a little bit about that.
I guess, should we talk about trajectory? And certainly the trajectories have both ups and downs.
Yeah, and also sometimes you can't anticipate.
Yeah, you definitely cannot anticipate. Well, I guess that the ups are certainly there, and I'm building an organisation and becoming a strong millennial leader in our country, and I guess at a global scale, was amazing. But it always has its ups and downs, and there are times when we're looking at somebody and the world might be looking at you because you're on that trajectory where everyone's looking at your life, admiring your life, and it's all really, really beautiful and rosy from the outside. However, it's not on the inside.
It's not all business class flights next to babes.
Yeah, it really isn't. And I guess that's one of the more important things that I ask leaders and everybody to do is, things often appear very different on the outside from you, and others just assume, well, it's all A-OK. So I ask that everybody really makes a conscious effort to be open and be vulnerable, and the true bravery is when people are vulnerable. I don't think there's much brave about hiding how you're feeling. I think it's not strong at all, in fact, because it's painful and scary to reveal yourself, and when you do, I think that's really strong. But then that's the only way we get results to move forward with ourselves and whatever we're doing. So there were definitely times where I felt alone, down, flat, and there were times when I was over the moon. But on the whole, from the outside, people observe you as you're
just success.
just success, right? Yeah, but what is success? I don't think success is a fast car.
No.
Success is an all-around love of self and the world.
Definitive definition either.
For sure. So then, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. And things change really fast in leadership and business and all that. But the thing about change is, for me, when I came out of DTA, it was painful. I felt I'd been betrayed by some people around me, and the pain was just incredible, like unstoppable pain. On the other, and that takes time to heal and process and all that. But the most incredible thing about it is when we're brave enough to confront our pain, we build and we get strong. And on the other side of that, I couldn't ask for a better life now than I've ever had.
Yeah, right. So there's a few key themes you were saying there about sort of your views on vulnerability and that being a strong thing. Were there times in your leadership, especially in DTA, where you felt the inability to show that vulnerability, or times where you maybe chose pride or needing to sort of have the answers, times where that's sort of what you chose and there were negative repercussions because of that?
Without a doubt. Very regularly, I think being a male, I think I chose the pride route quite regularly.
Yeah.
And
just what I want to dive into this, because I know that we've sat and sort of shared our views on particular leaders together.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and often that is the theme, that a feeling that they're not being completely authentic, or power's gone to their head.
There's I don't know if it's common, but I to a degree I believe it to be very common in our culture in Australia. And not to criticise, because I absolutely love what we have in our country, but
no, let's go there.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're very fortunate, right? But the thing that the thing about pride when leading, and certainly the pain caused by pride, was in hindsight totally evident. Not being able to admit I'm hurting, not being able to admit I feel lonely, not being able to admit I'm wrong, and it really perpetuates, because you start to get pain in yourself, and then when you're leading, your words are strong. You don't know the power, and if we think about the shitty boss that we may have had in the past, and we're like, why are they so mean? They probably didn't even know.
Or they were hurting.
But most likely they were hurting it. But the thing about them is that they probably didn't know the power of their words, because we tend to really have a great emphasis on the value of the words of our leaders or our teachers or whomever that may be. So in leadership, in hindsight, taking the pride route and then going to a pain route, if you will, doesn't work well for you. It's not going to serve you as a leader whatsoever.
Is it because it sort of becomes like the cage that you build, and then it's hard to dismantle that?
Totally. And the ego makes it almost impossible to dismantle that.
Yeah. And was that, so you use the word ego, and was that something that you used to be sort of as aware of prior to this last sort of 12 months of your journey, especially going through yoga teacher training? Did that cause like a bit of reflection back to the world of being a CEO and a young executive, and create some sort of realizations in hindsight?
I'm not floating around in the lotus pose just yet.
But you're not levitating?
Not levitating just yet. But certainly the opportunity to be on outside of where you were and reflect is, the value of that's immense. And that's probably where the value is. Obviously, going on a bit of a journey and learning some things outside of what I do has been fantastic. But I would encourage leaders and all of us to get outside of ourselves. And let's not just from a leadership perspective, but in general. Yeah. We wake up, we get out of the wrong side of the bed, and we're having a shitty day. Well, we're not having a shitty day. We're just caught up inside. Most likely a few small rolling thoughts that are perpetuating. They're not bringing us any value. So whilst we may not always be able to remove ourselves from a situation, if we can just catch ourselves and step aside from this ego sense and this rolling thoughts, because primarily they're rubbish.
And do you think that the key in that is just the awareness? So once you understand that you actually you can observe your thoughts and you don't have to buy into everything that you think.
My opinion is yes. If you cannot remove yourself from the situation, so in my case, I've been able to step out of being in a part of life. So it's easy. It's not there anymore, so it's really easy to step aside from it.
Yeah.
When we're going along with our day-to-day, we might have a bad relationship with somebody, and we can't get out of, that's usually pretty easy to get out of
the emotion.
Yeah, it's so we have a bad relationship with an emotion or a bad relationship with a feeling inside us. Maybe you can't just say I quit on that. You might be able to if that's one of the techniques, but to get a bit of get some distance.
Strategies.
So when we get distance, it's so much easier.
The perspective changes. Yeah.
And that will help us become. To me, that helps us become strong leaders, strong citizens, present people. If we have a world of present people, we're having a fantastic journey together. Yeah,
100%. And one thing that I write about in Love Out Loud is that when you start to choose love, you start to actually access a much greater perspective at all times, because when you're consciously choosing to look at something through authenticity and love, you're transported to a greater perspective straight away. And often when we're caught in sort of that fear base, I just want to read this question as well. We forget that we actually have that option to choose love. I know I've been writing a lot about love on my Facebook lately, and people have really been jumping on board with that because it's the better option for everyone involved, always. Hang on. So I'm apprentice chef. What my boss has done is every Monday we would sit down and talk about our problems and what we had over the week. We had over the week and made us.
What a legendary...
That's such a great... Oh, hey, Beck. I didn't even see it was you. That's awesome. Rebecca's an amazing young leader in her own right.
Should we read that question out loud? Can everybody see the question, or...?
It's just a comment, not just.
Oh, cool.
It's not a direct
Because
question.
this is so cool. Here's a really good
this
idea
is a strategy. I don't know how to answer it.
Friendships, relationships, in business also. Like, I really love that idea that Rebecca's going through. Like,
it's so simple, right? And what I read from that. So Rebecca's boss gets them to sit down every Monday and actually discuss the problems that they had and what the negative energy is over the week in order to move through that. When I read that, what jumps out at me is just creating the space for that.
Yeah, totally.
Create the space. And I think I've learnt this so much in leadership, that people want from a leader more than anything to feel like you're with that you're with them. As a leader, that you're with them. And that actually means when you don't know the answer or something's going wrong within your team, that could be, let's figure this out together. Yeah. Let's create the space to actually solve this problem together. And I'm willing to accept and admit that I don't have all of the answers, but I'm still happy to be a leader and to be with you through this process.
Yeah. I think that there's nothing more valuable than space and presence. Sometimes it just solves the problems without a word.
Yeah.
It's crazy, the power of being in the moment.
Nassim, which was one of the speakers that Adam and I saw last week, he consolidated something that I think about a lot, which is when something is observed just through observation and acknowledgement, its behaviour changes.
Yeah.
And that's science, that's physics. And I've always thought about that with emotion and with challenges that we experience in life, quite often more than anything. And I feel like this was really present in the session that I ran too.
Yeah.
More than anything, once the space is there and things are acknowledged and really had an opportunity, people feel they've had an opportunity to be seen and be heard, then change is just a natural consequence of that. Yeah.
There's nothing more healing. And that session that you ran 2 days ago, was it?
Yeah.
2 days? Oh, it was a weekend, or was it? Hang on, what day is it?
Actually, I feel like maybe it was yesterday. No, the day before. It was the day, anyway, 2 days ago.
That session really demonstrated to people, and I really, really wish people, if you get the chance, I don't know if it was recorded, but if you're watching this...
It was recorded.
if you're watching this, I don't know how they can find it, but if you
it's uploading at the moment, but it's a big file, so it'll take a while.
If you can, it'd be so good if you got to see it, because what Nicole did was create, I don't know how, there was probably 50 or so people in the room, and created an entire space of love, and it actually, I mean, Nicole's presence does that, but it wasn't. It's not necessarily that difficult to open up a room, and I think people in that room heal just by being in that space.
That's it. No, it's not complex, but often, like we can say it's easy. I feel because we've met that presence inside of ourselves. And I think people get so caught up and they think it's so hard. Just like people think meditation is hard. Mm-hmm. In reality, meditation is sitting in stillness and doing nothing. That's the point of meditation, and that's so difficult for people. And I always think about that in terms of this concept, especially in leadership, around being able to create that presence for people and be present. Yeah. And when you can't be present with you, when you can't be okay in your aloneness, and when you don't feel comfortable in your skin, it feels so hard to be able to be present with someone else. Yeah. Because they mirror your vulnerabilities, Like if you can't be with someone in their vulnerability, that's because you're not okay yet with the vulnerability that triggers in you.
So how could people practice self-love? Because in my opinion, what makes us really love outward is loving inward. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the love has always been there. It forever will be there. We need to peel back the layers to access that love in ourselves. Again, because just, societal conditioning, growing up, whatever, no one's to blame for this. It just is what it is. But how would you agree that we've got to access the self-love, and then 100%. We can love outward, and once we do, we have this amazing world around us?
Oh, hey kid. I think this is a great place to take this conversation, because maybe what we can give these guys are our processes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert as well. Like, I die often.
Your transition, this is what inspires me. Like, your transition in such a short space of time is really noticeable. Like how I feel in your presence. I've always really liked you and loved you, but how I feel I'm able to be myself in your presence is definitely, it's shifted upwards. There's been a leap in that, and I know that's because of, like you said, the inner work that you've done, and the less judgment that you hold towards yourself, the more you're able to hold space of acceptance for other people. Okay. And I think, to answer your question specifically, like what are the strategies, one of them is to be around people like yourself. I really appreciate that even the chats we've had the last few weeks, you've actually been able to say, like, these are the insecurities that I have battled with, and I still battle with. And I love that so much, when someone can actually be honest with, and that's vulnerability, right? Like, to me, that's what vulnerability truly is. When you can be honest, it's not about being perfect. When you can actually say, this is honest communication. I think that it's crazy how difficult people make this. Often people will say to me, or come to me when they're having a challenge or a problem, and they'll say, I don't know how to confront this person about this thing, because they're trying to find the perfect words and the perfect way to frame it. If you just speak to the present moment, there's always a way forward. There's always a pathway. So maybe that is by starting a conversation by saying, hey, I'm actually feeling really insecure about having this conversation with you. That's good, or I don't know where to start. Yeah. But as soon as you start to speak to the elephant in the room, then it starts to dissolve, and that pressure and that shame and that tension start to fade away. So when I can be around someone like yourself and we can have that dialogue, like, I feel like I can communicate really openly and honestly with you.
Yeah, and we never have it's the easiest thing on earth to communicate about difficult topics, easy topics.
Yeah, and I think where that comes from is when you know that there's love in a relationship, in a connection, work, friendship, romantic, family, stranger on the street, and you can get there in yourself where you know for a fact. I tell strangers I love them all the time. When that love is there, you're more able to communicate from that space of honesty, because you don't question your own intention. right? It has nothing to do with the other person's judgment.
I want to catch this as well.
But when you don't, hey Kylie, when you don't question your own intention, then there's absolute space to be able to communicate anything and everything.
Yeah.
Because you know that if there's mutual love, the person's never going to jump on the back foot and react. And that's such an amazing space when you have that.
So how can people, I think, I just want to come back to this and then come back to that. Can we do that?
Yeah, we can go.
I'm not very good with this stuff.
Okay.
Kylie.
In all interactions, in any given moment, every one of us has the capacity to be both a student and teacher of life simply by being and holding compassionate space.
So true.
That oozes love. And I know we've had these conversations, Kylie, and I think that that's a beautiful way of framing this. When you can go into any interaction and understand that this is a co-creation, and that we have equal amounts to learn and give to each other. We were talking about this yesterday. People that you have an even keel of giving and receiving. That's when you create. I almost see it as like that's when you create an upward momentum.
Yeah.
Because you, like another metaphor I see it as is we're different colours and we can create a different canvas together in our connection. So when we're giving and receiving in a fluid way, then the painting can come bigger and bigger and more beautiful. Yeah. But if I'm just taking your colours and I'm not giving you mine, it actually it robs me of what we could create. Yeah,
and exhausts the resources of the relationship.
Exactly.
I think that, to me, one of the other things when we talk about open dialogue and conversation is, I don't know, but a lot of the people that I talk to these days, they have an inner critic, an inner critical voice, and it's a really mean voice at times.
You would never usually speak to your best friend or your mum or your dad.
You just wouldn't. Yeah. And I've often said I would love to print a transcript of what this thing says about you and what you believe.
It's a good exercise to do, actually.
Yeah. And then if you read it, you'd be like, that is not true, like that is awful.
Or if you do think it's true, then that's really causation for you to start doing that work.
Yeah, for sure. But and then I think one of that perfect conversation or perfect words in that conversation that people, so they delay that conversation. Yeah. Because they're so afraid not of necessarily the outcome of the conversation, but the outcome of what this internal dialogue is going to tell them about themselves, or has already told them. It's already told them what the outcome will
premeditated.
be, and it's torture.
Yeah,
it's
so
torture.
that is the thing that people really battle with. I know I did when I was younger, before I started to understand these things.
I still do sometimes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Beyond just the critic premeditating the conversation, actually going to have these dialogues, even as a leader, I experienced this as a young leader, but then actually feeling like crippled afterwards. Yeah. Because I still didn't, and then I think this is where presence is important. Sure. The conversation actually might have been fine and the person might have been really understanding, but I still was so unable to be present with myself that I still went away and spiraled. Yeah. You know, I was sharing this with a good friend of mine, documentarian back in Australia, after my TED talk, because I just felt like I didn't do as good as I wanted to do, and that was like a heartbreaking thing. And I was sitting there like I just realized a dream, and I was just thinking of all the things that I could have done to make it better. And his response to me was he showed me, you know, the dance Michael Jackson did first live for Billie Jean, and he does this like trick, and it was the first time he ever did moonwalk, right? And the way that he ends the moonwalk. And my friend was saying, you know, that's the dance that made Michael Jackson famous. Mm-hmm. But he reports being in a depression for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards because he was a millisecond off the close of that dance move that he knew he was capable of doing. So my question from that is, as a leader, how do you balance, you know, the expectation that you have on yourself? And I actually think expectations can sometimes be a good thing. Yes. Because the expectation comes from you knowing your capability and your potential versus actually self-love and self-compassion and the gap between the potential and what you're sometimes capable of delivering on in that moment.
I have an answer for that, and it's actually there is no balance or whatever, is that making mistakes, failing, whatever you want to call it, are good. They're really good. Because but in the context of how we put them. So, because this inner critic, nothing will ever be good enough for it.
Yeah.
But it's not you. It is just a condition.
And even if there are moments, right, where it does, because I've experienced moments where my inner critics felt satisfied.
Oh yeah.
But you need to realise that it's fleeting. Yeah, it's fleeting.
But like so the thing is that when we
Thanks, Emma.
when we flip it on its head and we go, I completely stuffed that up. Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Well, that's great. You stuffed it up. But what we need to celebrate how you pulled yourself out of the hole.
Totally.
Because I'm sure, well, I saw your TED Talk and I thought it was outstanding.
Yeah. Thank you.
Firstly, no one knows what your intention was anyway when you think you've stuffed something, when that inner critic tells you anyway, and everyone loves it. And this is for you guys and everything you do in real life.
Unlike our lives,
and for me, like I got to talk with last night. I ran into some speakers at Mind Valley who were presenting a curriculum for the first time this morning, and they said, "Oh, we're a little bit." One of them, she's a very experienced speaker. I won't mention her name, but she's an incredible speaker. And she said, "Oh, I'm a bit nervous." And I said, "Is it the first time you've taught the curriculum?" And the answer was yes. And I said, "Well, great, because no one else will know what's meant to happen, so you can't get it wrong."
There's no benchmark.
But we need to celebrate not necessarily the failure or the falling down, but we celebrate the getting up, because every time you get up, you get stronger and you get better, and you're unbreakable. Just get up.
Yeah.
And then the trajectory,
then
just
it
like
begins
getting
again.
up, you move forward anyhow. That's the battle, right?
It's
You
like
win.
the metaphor of if you don't feel like going for a run, put your joggers on.
Yeah.
Walk to the start line. You know, get your music ready, and by the time you're there, it'll feel very achievable.
For sure. Some mornings when I don't want to go for the run, and I've done that, and I still don't want to go.
Yeah.
I walk outside, and then I walk. And when I've walked for about 50 to 100 meters, my body starts moving anyway. It sort of just goes, "Oh, well, let's just get going." It knows, right? It knows what to do if you just get up.
100%. And I feel like that's such a beautiful thing, and it mirrors something that I like to remind people really often, which is you have an intelligence, right? And intelligence is not...
Celebrate uncertainty, sorry.
Hey Hannah, much love. Intelligence is so far beyond cognitive programming, right? Intelligence, the intelligence that exists inside all of you guys, inside Adam, inside me, inside every person, supersedes your cognitive program or the story, the show reel that's happening in your mind. Your intelligence is designed to evolve. Literally every part of your makeup, your neurological, biological makeup is designed to evolve and to heal and to become stronger.
Yeah.
Just like the universe is doing. So when you can work in rhythm with that, right? And this is something I'd actually love to hear your perspective on, because I'm very big on knowing my rhythm. Like, what does it feel like when Nick's in her flow? My mojo, you know, what's Adam's mojo like? And how do you know when you're like in that rhythm and you're in your flow and things are sort of working for you rather than against you, versus when you're out of that rhythm and you're having a day where everything feels really disjointed?
I might be a bit crazy, but I really like both now. Actually, I like because when I'm having a day where I don't want to do anything, and I'm not motivated, and then I get up and show up and do something, it feels even better.
Yeah, so it's like even more of a win.
It totally is. Like, and an example, I think we went to the gym yesterday and I said, I've been feeling flat and lazy all day. Went to the gym, didn't want to go.
Next minute.
Came out and life was awesome, you know. And it's like this with work, with a hard conversation, with our relationships.
Back when to the original conversation, especially with hard conversations, right?
But show up.
Yeah.
Or get up when you fall down and then show up.
The thing that you don't want to do is actually the key to the greatest version of that feeling. So the thing that you're procrastinating the most is actually going to make you feel the best. Yeah. And that's the payoff, you know, the difficulty, the pain of doing that thing has the most gain.
Yeah.
It's exists in that polarity.
It's really funny, this one, because I don't know why. I'd love to, maybe there's some people who are watching and they might be able to send some information on this, but I don't know because I don't have a background in psychology. But I don't know why we can't remember how good it felt at the end of exercise before we're about to start, or how good it feels to have an accomplishing conversation.
I actually think it's because I don't think it's a part of our wiring. I mean, yes, there's a mechanism in our survival which is always geared to look at threat, right? Because that's survival. But I also think it's programming. When you've geared yourself to think about the negative for so many years, and that's the society that we grew up in. So even if you started doing this personal development work when you were a teenager, there's still extreme amounts of formative years where you've been geared by society to look to the negative.
Sure.
And you've trained your focus. And when you've trained your focus that intensely, it takes time to actually retrain your focus. Like if you learn to walk in a particular way your whole life, well, this happens to people, and then they find out that, you know, their hips are rotated outwards and they have to learn to walk differently. That's a really hard thing to teach yourself after so many years and decades of doing it a particular way.
But yeah, so the big thing for me, to answer the thing about just to close on that, I guess, the flow and when you're not feeling the flow, is just get in. Like when the bad's not bad. It's just. And I watched a presentation by Ray Dalio last night, who I really like. Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is one of the biggest business guys in the world. He's an older guy. He's in the top 100 most influential people. But he's now on a journey where he's not really interested in income anymore. He's interested in helping the world and helping people, which is admirable in itself. But he talked about his journey and how he does things, and he gets excited when there's a failure or a problem. Yeah. That's actually what charges him more now. Yeah. Because he just loves to show up. You need something to resist against. Yeah. Right? And I really admire that.
Balance your growth.
If when problems come along for us, and that a problem can be just in the morning we wake up and we're not feeling great. And that's okay. We all have those mornings. But when these things show up for us, flip it on its head and enjoy it. It's really, when you do that, I mean, we've been socially conditioned, yes, to go, oh, woe is me. Not woe is me. Our body will serve us. Our body will do everything we ever ask of it and more. Our intellectual brain will also serve us and do everything we ask of it and more. So we should almost enjoy let's try to, not should, I don't want to say should, but let's try to, when they come, to enjoy it, because then we get to utilise these tools, this miracle that we've been given.
It comes back to just the awe and the gratitude of the miracle, right? Like it's miraculous that we have this ability to live and experience and to use these things in whichever way you wish to use them, which is like, you can choose for it to be really negative, you can choose for it to master it and actually have it work for you.
This is cool.
I'm screening, so this is Tanya. Hey Tanya, I'm screening my first documentary tomorrow for the first time, and I feel so fearful of failing their expectations. I'm so bad at navigating this, but then I remember this was my goal.
It's a bit tricky.
I know.
Is it this thing?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, we are having
technical difficulties. I think I just liked it in like an angry face. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. This was my goal. Here we go. And I'm here just to share the moment, not ask for the criticism. It can only get better from here. Yes. Wow. Oh, perfect timing. Thank you. You know, I also, I think a really big thing that happens when there's big opportunities, and I can vouch for this massively, because there have been key opportunities in my career where I felt it's so significant, right? I put significance on this one opportunity, and yet every step of the marathon, right, is just another step, and they're equally as important. You can't remove one of those steps because it will affect the distance of the marathon. You take one step away that you did in that marathon and you don't cross the finish line. Yeah, does that make sense as a metaphor?
Yeah.
And yet there have been steps, not leaps, steps, the natural next progression, like speaking at Mon Valley, like doing my TED Talk, like being appointed onto the Federal Commission, that I put so much significance on, and I was like, this is a quantum leap. But in reality, it was all the work I had done, all the choices I had made up until that moment, meant that was just the next step. But I put so much pressure on it because I was like, this is so much more than that.
Yeah,
I wigged myself out. Yeah, this is why I'm sharing this.
The celebration is like, I mean, I don't even
You're
think
ready
it matters
for this.
because, but the
it
best
wouldn't
thing
be happening if it wasn't time.
I think the most spectacular thing about, I mean, Tanya's specific thing here is you're screening your first documentary. Done. You know, like, I mean,
yeah, amazing.
I don't think I'm ever going to get to screen a documentary. Let's never say never, but you should be so proud and congratulations.
Congratulations.
Whatever the outcome is you've done so well, right? And because you got there, you showed up and you put it
deserve
down.
it.
Yeah?
Was maybe my convoluted way of saying that every step and choice that you made up until this amazing moment, you being able to share your work with the world, has prepared you for this. And this is a huge, massive thing, and it needs to be celebrated. But also see it as it's just the natural progression of all the things that you've done to be in a position where you get to share your work. You know, not have to, you get to, with the world. Yeah.
We are about to run out of battery.
I know. But if you guys love Adam, just
I love you all, so
let us know on the thread.
But I really think so. I think we started talking about leadership and we meandered as we do. But the things that I really want to ask everyone and encourage everyone to do is do these things: is show up, speak up, always, and be yourself, because you are enough. And that's what you really are enough. And when you do all these things, no one will judge you anyhow, because they're climbing their own hill. And do not allow this inner critic to judge you, because you are enough already. You're amazing.
I love it.
I didn't mean to end the thing.
Adam's really right about that, you know, that people aren't going to judge because everyone wants that for themselves. So if they are judging, it's just because you're doing something that's actually really scares them, the prospect of doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Adam, for being such an amazing young male role model for Australia.
Thank you for letting me go on Facebook Live. Thanks for listening to everyone watching.
Much love to you guys. And give Adam a follow on LinkedIn and also Facebook. He's amazing and you won't regret it.
Bye.
Bye.